There have been videos like this of John Cena and he looks broken, and I think I know why. Is it years of heavy lifting, WWE matches, or just aging? Well, I think I have the answer, but to be 100% clear, this is total speculation, and I'm an expert in the musculoskeletal space, so that's where I'm going to stay, that's where I'm going to speculate, and the point of this video is to get to proper training principles and how you can avoid aggressively aging. Now, that's of course still speculation, and being in the public eye can be very annoying, even for me, and I have 1% of what John Cena has in terms of popularity, but I want to put this out to give some education on why this might happen, how you can avoid it, and how you can train healthy forever, which is always my goal. Now, if you like this information, you'd like to see moving forward more of this information, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get into it. And first, let's cover off what could be wrong. John Cena departed full-time wrestling in early 2025, but this was due to a pec tear after a very long career. This very long career came with a variety of other injuries and issues. He had this gruesome injury with the Big Show, which hurt his knee. He tore his pec in a match. In 2008, he had a herniated disc. He broke his neck versus Batista, and obviously a number of other things that might have gone unreported, but surely throughout his career, he would have had bumps and bruises along the way and injuries that just weren't put out there, especially with the frequency that he competed. Now, obviously this put his body through the ringer, but none of these really point to why he's walking the way he is right now. And again, if we look at this walking, he's a little bit stumped over, his toes are pointed in, which the knees is caving in a little bit, and he doesn't really look uncomfortable, but the walk is not normal. It's certainly not the large, proud walk of John Cena with the oversized t-shirt and baggy shorts that we got accustomed to over his years of competing. Now, obviously this is speculation, and hopefully this is a short-term problem, but everyone is saying he looks like he hurt his back. It kind of looks like that, but let's talk about why. In the videos of him walking, we see a few things. First, we see him hunched over at the hips and hinged at the hips slightly while walking, and this is where most people would stop, saying he is a little bit hunched over and maybe he's just walking like that because of old age, but he's not that old. He's not even 50 years old right now. And why would you walk hunched over if you hurt your back like this? Often people point to a herniated disc, but if you herniate your disc and you hunch over, it's going to make that likely posterior herniation feel worse. So the other things that we see are internally rotated feet, and he also stacks himself as he turns, like some sort of nerve issue is affecting him and he doesn't want to twist himself. Now, the gluteal nerve begins with roots coming from L4, L5, and S1, and these are similar nerve roots for the sciatic nerve, which is impaired in 40% of people over their lifetime. This is not an abnormal thing to have pain down the back of your back and down the back of your leg. Now, I don't believe it's a herniated disc, and I just gave my reason why. If you hunch forward, that's going to make a posterior herniation feel worse. So we got to think, what other back injuries might this be? Because it does look like he's being sensitive on his back. But it isn't crazy to think that a 48-year-old man who has been through what he has is having some sort of compression to the lower back area. This would explain reduced activation of the glutes if it affects the gluteal nerve. Leaning forward to avoid compressive forces on a potentially herniated disc is unlikely, but leaning forward to alleviate other different nerve pressures is totally possible. And of the potential injuries that could cause this type of pain in the low back, it generally boils down to some sort of disc herniation or some sort of disc degeneration. A lean forward posture, like I said, is very unlikely to be a disc herniation, because if we think of two vertebrae and we think of the vertebrae or the intervertebral disc coming out the back, if we hunch forward, we put that sort of posterior pressure to shoot it back even harder. And anyone who's herniated disc knows you don't walk hunched over, you walk completely vertical and very, very uncomfortable, and he doesn't look like that. Now, posterior disc herniation is the most common herniation, and 60% of men over 50 years old have this. It's made worse with forward flexion, but does John Cena have disc hernias? Like, almost for sure, based on what he's been through. But is it a problem? Almost never over the long run. Your discs heal like every other tissue in your body. Now, this disc herniation, when severe, can push in the spinal column, can put pressure on nerve roots, and can cause pain that feel like stabbing or shooting, like an electrical shock. With disc degeneration, the space between vertebrae decreases because your discs are literally getting smaller and losing fluid. This has a similar effect of narrowing space and causing pressure on the nerves, but it's not a nerve in the spinal column, it's a nerve root coming out the facet joints. Facet joints are the spaces between your vertebrae, and when that space decreases, you can pinch down on any of those different nerve roots. And with enough disc degeneration, it's possible that leaning forward, there is still some compression on the nerve roots, causing the collapsing of the knees. But if you lean forward, it does open up the space of the facet joints, which would give a lot of relief to someone with any sort of compression issue arising from the facet joints. So that's my guess. But what's more interesting is what could cause something like this and how can you avoid it? Over the course of his career, John Cena has had many falls, injuries, incidents, like the reel I'm going to play for you above as I keep talking. And really, this comes down to tissue-specific tolerance over time. Every tissue in your body has two ways that you can hurt it. One is that over time, you don't give yourself enough rest and your tissue tolerance decreases so that the same thing you were doing before eventually causes an injury. Over the course of John Cena's career and with how often he was doing things and how often he was in the WWE competing, well, that certainly is a possibility. The second way that you can injure a tissue is that the acute tissue tolerance is exceeded in any moment. Let's take a shin bone, for example. I can knock on my shin bone right now, and it's fine. But if I took a hammer and hit my shin bone with a hammer, it's going to snap in half because that tissue tolerance is not accustomed to being hit with a hammer. But if we see people who are kickboxers or some of those Japanese, Chinese, whatever culture it is in Asia, where they hit themselves with bamboo, well, those guys have incredibly strong bones in that direction. If you do something like wrestling, you're accustomed to doing the moves in the way that they should be done. But just the same way as there's been many back slams and many times John Cena's landed on his back, when he landed on his neck, he broke his neck because his neck is not accustomed to that movement. Of course, there are some things that you could never become accustomed to. You can never become accustomed to hitting a car or getting hit by a car. But over time, good training principles mean that you're going to create a very strong, robust tissue, a very strong, robust body. And frankly, it's likely that John Cena has knocked these principles out of the park because he was in the WWE for over 20 years. And over 20 years, he was at the top for a plurality of that, meaning that he constantly had to defend his belt and defend the titles. Now, of course, this is entertainment, but the entertainment is just in the outcome, not in the process. In the process, his body is really doing what you think it's doing. He is slamming himself on the ground over and over and over, and those micro injuries can accelerate over time. So how do we avoid any sort of long-term degeneration? How do we avoid decreasing tissue tolerance? Well, rest is the most important thing. And there are two ways that we rest between sessions and how you program. And you must program so that you don't overload any specific area of the body. Now, I think this is generally overstated in terms of how to do this, but you can't back up the same movement day after day after day with the caveat of at high volume. Could you squat every single day? Well, yes. Every time you stand out of a chair, you're squatting. So it's oversimplifying to say that any squat contributes to a degeneration that you should limit as much as possible, because if you squatted light every day, that's totally fine. Do I support a full body workout for a 60-year-old person 6 days a week? I think that could be done really well, but you have to mitigate volume and you have to take at least 1 to 2 days off every single week. And that's in the acute phase. Chronically, you need deload weeks if you're hyper consistent with your training, and those deload weeks come every 4 to 6 weeks. This is where you drop intensity by 50% and load by 20 to 30% to give your soft tissues time to catch up. If we think of degeneration-related problems, they're always coming from soft tissue. You don't degenerate a bicep or a quad, you degenerate your low back, your knees, your hips. Well, those soft tissues don't have their own blood supply, so they don't adapt near as quickly as your active muscular system, because the way that we adapt is through blood supply, getting nutrients to an area, having it broken down and rebuilt. And if we don't take those deload weeks, our soft tissues will never catch up to our muscles, and the difference between what your muscles are capable of and what your soft tissues are capable of, that space just grows and grows and grows until your muscles are so strong that they can overpower your soft tissues. Never mind, your soft tissues themselves are getting broken down, so those things that you could do before, like take a jog down the street, that ability is deteriorated. Now, that's one side of the equation. That's certainly relevant to the conversation with John Cena. I don't think during the bulk of his career there was times for him to take a deload from competing and from training, because he always had to look like a beast. He always was a beast, and he was always training to compete, and he competed so often. That's one side of the equation. The other side is that exercise has been demonized with overuse injuries, with degeneration, almost like our body is a car and that our engine only has so long to run before it totally runs out of steam, or before we need the brakes replaced, which is a knee, or before we need the chassis replaced, which is a hip or whatever. Our bodies are not like that. Our bodies adapt to the demands placed on them so long as adequate rest is given. And if adequate rest is given, then our soft tissue will become more and more robust over time. It's interesting, runners actually have healthier soft tissue than non-runners. Even though runners have a lot of incidences of knee pain and hip pain, the reason that they know about the knee and hip pain is because they're demanding a lot more of their body. If they just sat on the couch over time, well, they wouldn't feel these problems. Exercise has been caused to increase cartilage turnover, meaning it creates a healthier tissue that's less likely to degenerate over time. Now, a large part of degeneration is a genetic component, but other than that, your lifestyle determines a lot of how your life is going to go long-term in terms of your long-term health. And the foundation of that healthy lifestyle is how you exercise and how you recover. Now, that's the first way to be able to avoid any sort of long-term degeneration is exercise and recover well. Second comes down to your diet. There's anecdotal evidence that collagen is useful. This is somewhat debated, but not a bad thing. But if you're deficient in any vital nutrient to your soft tissue or to your bones, you're going to have a very hard time retaining that. And that's why we see the travesty of young women who deplete themselves of everything. Well, their peak bone mineral density, for example, occurs somewhere between 18 and 21 years old. After they hit that, it slowly degrades over time until they hit menopause when it falls off a cliff. So your goal has to be to get that peak as high as possible. And that peak as high as possible comes at a time where they generally deplete themselves. And this is where we have a big problem for people who have a health focus, but just have the wrong idea. All of your micronutrients like vitamin D, calcium, magnesium, they're going to assist you to be able to have good soft tissue over the long term, be strong over the long term, and build yourself up. Now, in the Western world, micronutrient deficiency is way overstated. We do not have micronutrient deficiency en masse because we have so many nutrients readily available to us. The best advice you could possibly get is eat a varied diet with a variety of fruits, a variety of vegetables, a variety of meats and fish, and you're going to get the nutrients that you need. So as much as a fixed meal plan is a good idea for a lot of people, you should change that up over time, especially when it comes to water-soluble nutrients. These micronutrients go in and out of your body very, very quickly, and they're not stored. So if you don't eat this micronutrient for an extended period of time, you eventually will become depleted in that nutrient. We also have to think a big one, vitamin D. For anyone living in the northern hemisphere, well, we have depressing winter, and I don't understand why anyone lives in these really horrible weathered countries. Canada, Russia, Scandinavian countries, the UK. I personally don't get it. I would like to live somewhere warm, but my family made that choice. So anyway, moving on. If you don't have sun all year round, vitamin D can be a big challenge for you to get. So vitamin D supplementation is probably the only micronutrient that I say we do experience deficiency in some reasonable quantities. So that's as simple as that. If you follow really good programming, and if you give yourself the nutrients, and if you give yourself the rest, this long-term degeneration will not happen. And all of those good exercise and recovery principles are actually going to make you less likely to degenerate rather than more likely. So get out there, train, rest, recover, and you should be healthy over the long run. Now, is John Cena broken? Probably not for the long term. It's always possible that just something happened the day before this video was taken. It's now gone viral and he was hurt for a couple of days or sore for a couple of days. But if you put a camera on any professional athlete over a long period of time, you will see days that they look like they're walking like an old man, even at 25 years old, even at 30 years old. At any age, these people, professional athletes, myself included, sometimes just wake up feeling horrible. And this is where we get to the difference between performance and health. John Cena had such a strong performance demand for such a long period of time. And part of that performance was how he looked as well, and he couldn't let up on that. And that's at the sacrifice of health. It always will be, and that's just the reality of it. So every time you cheer for a sport, every time you see an athlete or an actor who looks like an absolute monster, understand that that is not the pinnacle of health. Now, to be the pinnacle of health, you don't necessarily have to be Brian Johnson, but you do have to have a reasonable BMI, pretty good insulin sensitivity, and pretty good blood lipid profile, good blood pressure, and those things would mean that you're doing your best work. Get your 10,000 steps a day, get 150 minutes a week where your heart rate is up, resistance train at least 3 times a week, if not more. Sidebar, resistance training is the best thing you can do for your long-term health. I 100% believe that. But follow those principles and you should live a long, healthy life. So Next time you see an athlete, an actor that looks amazing, thank them for their sacrifice, because they truly are sacrificing their bodies and their long-term health for your entertainment. And that's a small piece of what John Cena has done, regardless of whatever's going on right now, which we don't know and probably never will know and don't need to know. He's a man unto himself. He has a private life. I'm sure he would like this. I'm sure this is just a blip on the radar. Here's a blip of mine on the radar. The day after I got stem cells, I couldn't even walk, but I was not able to walk doing something to make myself healthier. And if you saw me that day, you would think that strongman had totally destroyed my body, which is just not true at all. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening, guys. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below on your thoughts on John Cena and how he's walking. Wish him all the best, because he's definitely going to watch this video. And as per usual, lift heavy, be kind, and we'll see you tomorrow.